We are live. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, what's up, nerds? Goz Master here with another Magic the Gathering Puzzle Quest. Nerds on parade. I am joined by the one, the only, the infamous Steve. What's up, Steve? How are you, man?
Hey man, how are you? It's good to be here, definitely.
It is good to see
Yeah,
you,
I'm doing
dude.
okay. Yeah, no, it is. This may be the first time I've been on camera. Normally, when I'm doing my streams, it's all just my phone screen.
Yeah.
So it's maybe the first time people have seen me. So hello to everyone, all the little boys and girls watching.
Uh,
I will be reading a bedtime story later.
it's a Goz Master exclusive, ladies and gentlemen. The first time you get to see Steve's face. And might I
Hey,
add,
well done.
please add your face to the rest of your streams. Your facial expressions while you're going on your rants would be just beautiful to behold. I'm just going to say that. All right. So I'm going to do my normal thing where I'm going to ask you a question. I'm going to go start making the announcements inside of the threads and let everybody know that we're live. So on that note, my man, tell us a bit about Steve. I know you're in the UK. We're a 7-hour difference, so thanks for taking the time to do this. But in addition to that, tell the folks how you found the game, just your backstory into it, and whatever you feel comfortable sharing with us. All right? And I'm gonna go type some
That's
stuff.
groovy. All right, cool. Yeah, thanks very much. Well, I am Steve. Hello, everybody. I've been playing the game basically as long as it's been running, to be honest. Maybe not since day one. I wanted to play it from day one, but my phone wouldn't cope with it back then. I had this crappy little S3 Mini, wouldn't cope with Magic Puzzle Quest. So I was waiting to play it on day one when it came out, but I have basically been playing it all the time since then. So, I mean, God, that's nearly we are getting on for 10 years now, aren't we? It's like 9 years
Yeah,
maybe.
yeah.
And I've pretty much been playing it constantly. I had a bit of a dip somewhere in the middle where I
Hmm.
quit for a little while, but I came back to it like most of us always do, I think. Yeah, I've always been a Magic the Gathering player since the very early days. I missed like the Moxes and the Black Lotuses and stuff like that,
Yeah.
but I have got a bunch of dual lands that I opened from boosters.
Nice.
So, yeah, for 20, 25 years, I've been a Magic the Gathering player. And yeah, Magic Puzzle Quest keeps me connected to that. I like the fact that I'm still connected to Magic, even though I'm in a place in my life now where I can't play a lot of paper. I like the
Well,
fact that Magic Puzzle Quest keeps me connected to the game.
I was gonna ask, do you play any arena at all?
No, not really, actually. I have played. I mean, I remember playing Apprentice, if that means anything to you,
It does.
many years ago. That was like a homebrew kind of UI that people would use to play with each other, and it was
Uh-huh.
very janky. But I played a bit of that. Haven't really played any arena or any of the other kind of magic official magic product. This is probably the most official magic product that I play, to
Right.
be honest. Magic Puzzle Quest.
And not that anybody asked, but the way I found PQ was I actually in 2016 was looking for and I had a phone. Everybody got the phone to start looking for apps. I was jonesing because I'd play paper, and I was looking for an online mobile experience really to play, and it didn't exist. And then a couple years later, I wound up looking again, and I think it was 2018. I think is when I started. So it's been out a year or so after it had been out, and there it was. And I thought, oh, cool. And for the longest time, I kept trying to talk to the person that I was fighting against. I didn't know. I just went into the chat and started talking like, "Hey, how are you?" And then I couldn't figure out how to
Yeah.
block with my creatures, like in Paper Magic. It really drove me crazy until I said, I probably should go through the tutorials and figure out maybe what I'm doing wrong here.
Oh, but we spent ages on. I remember on the early days of the forum trying to figure out what order your creatures would block in. We didn't. It's fairly simple, that your
Right.
defenders go at the bottom and your non-defenders go at the top. But it used to really confuse us because we were used to coming from paper and we were
Right.
expecting creatures to block everything.
Right.
Figuring out the rules that they didn't tell you in the early days of Puzzle Quest was quite challenging, to be
for
honest.
for sure. For sure. And that's the reason why I tell folks a lot of times, or in the videos I do, I try to always remember what that new experience was like. And that's one thing that, we as the content creators have to try to communicate to the devs whenever they're here, even when they're not listening, we still tell them, you really have to reevaluate that and look at it from a full perspective. And frankly, that's part of the reason why we were talking off camera before we started here was the community and why the community is so important. I've had people that were just about chased off from the game because of a couple of, bad apples in the bunch, and
Mm.
the rest of the community embraces them. Like, no, no, that's not the way it is. We're really a caring community. And that person and other individuals come back and say, you know what, the game's at times mediocre, and at sometimes being fair, and many times it's throw your phone worthy, but the community is so good. We have such a wide group of just really awesome people that they stick around for that. And I think that's so important to giving and helping and guiding. And I think it's because we're like, hey, dude, this doesn't block, or this is what happens, and this person isn't live, and these are the cards you want to chase. And just that kind of guidance and direction really creates for, I think, an awesome environment, which is part of the reason why we're having this conversation today. I know that in the forums that you are, and in fact, why don't we talk a bit about that? Now, in the game itself, you are one of the prime, although you don't say, you're one of the leaders within, it's FTA, correct, from the Ashes?
FTA is the Discord where I reside. Yeah. So I mean, I agree. I've got to say, I agree with you. I think the community in this game is fabulous. It's always been the thing that's kept me in. When I did quit briefly,
Mm-hmm.
I stayed connected to the community. That's what got me back into the game.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not one of these people, unfortunately, that can deal with like going to 12 different Discords. It blows my mind.
Right.
I can
Right.
only, I stay mostly in FTA just because
Right.
I can only cope with that much input from one Discord at a time. But,
I completely get it.
but I do feel the community it's got to be the number one thing about this game, hasn't it? We like playing the
100%.
game, we like the cards, we like the art, we like so many things about it, but the community is the tops in this game, really.
It
I
is
think.
100%. And in all things being fair, that's the real reason I think a lot of people stick around, is because
Yeah,
when it's all said and
definitely.
done, even when it's bad, the people are
Things
still
do
great.
get bad sometimes, and I love complaining about this game. I'm
You?
always complaining about something in this game.
Never. I
But
never would have guessed that.
even that can be a real bonding experience. You sit around in the Discord and you bitch about the game with your
Yeah.
good friends that you've made through the game.
Right. It's very cathartic for sure. And many
Yeah.
people will say, "Oh, Goz is so what's the word? Toxically positive, maybe at times." And I do like to
You
let
can
love
be a bit of a
rule.
Boy Scout, can't you? Yeah.
I am, and I try to look for the good things about it, because at the end of the day, for me, it's a game. I do my fair share of complaining, though. I do come in and say, this ain't it. I
Sure.
put a video out, like, nobody asked for this, right? And it was one that you even looked at and said, like, hey, and the sense I got, I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but it was, if Goz is complaining about this, does that mean that this is actually a real problem, right? It's like, it's not sunshines and rainbows. I'd like to let love rule where I can, but at the end of the day, the game has a lot of challenges. There are some stuff that is just so ass backwards in the game that it should be addressed and dealt with. And the devs, however anyone feels about that, I feel, you and I have this conversation too, and we're going to get into the meat of it now, is that, we have differing opinions on how, when, what's appropriate, the expectations of the game. And I think, just to kind of start this real conversation off, I think what's clear for everybody, and I hope they understand this, I don't have any doubt you want what's best for the game. I hope
Mm.
you don't have any doubt about my goals for the game, that I want it to be great. I want it to be good. I want people to come and play, and I want it to get exposure, and I want it to get just a massive ton of new players, so that we can have those glory days of where we had coalitions that could, keep to themselves. I'm glad they're, out of necessity. We're talking about the teams, the coalitions have come together, and there's a lot more camaraderie. There's a lot more unity versus what it was before. But at the same time, I do want an influx of people, because the game is not I don't believe the game's in a sustainable place. How do you feel about that? I don't know if we've been talking about that.
Hard to say. I think maybe I do feel people might have overreacted just a little bit to the fact they cut the rewards. I mean, that was a dick move to cut the rewards,
It
but
was.
it's the kind of thing they do all the time,
Yeah. Yeah, for
and I
sure.
don't think that's really emblematic of the game dying. They're certainly claiming they want to produce 6 sets a year at the moment and make more cards.
Right.
So that's a good sign.
Right.
That could be all talk. We don't know yet. I suppose one of my big concerns for the future is universes beyond. I mean, have they got the IPs to do the Spider-Man set
Yeah, I don't
and the
think they
Final
do.
Fantasy set? And if they don't, how are they going to make 6 sets a year?
Yeah.
That's always been my biggest concern. I wish they'd said something about that in the last Mana Echoes.
Well, and so on that note, let's kind of go over the agenda of what we're gonna do. The current state of standards, kind of where we're leading stuff, and I think we have to, before we can even talk about standard, frankly, Steve. I think that what we have to look at is the state of the game from a developer standpoint.
Okay.
If we'd had this conversation like quarter 3 last year, I'd have been full fledged make have my own magic puzzle quest, make MPQ great again kind of thing. Like I'd be cheering and waving my
Wow.
flag. I'd be all over. Yeah, I'd be full blown
Yeah.
wizard maga, I guess is what it would be. Um and then the way that the final quarter happened, I think a lot of goodwill. I think a lot of people were rubbed in poorly, the events and stuff. There was a certain learning curve for, at least for me. I'll speak for myself. I looked at it as okay. I personally think that there was a ramp up phase. They had to learn, all the pieces, where all the, where the broomsticks are in the linen closets, kind of thing. They just had to get their bearing for the
Mhm.
game. They had to get a sense of the community. They had to get a sense of what's good, what isn't, and then they're bringing their own game ideas to it. And furthermore, whether this is good or a bad thing, they brought a couple, at least a few people, 2 or 3 people, or if not more, um, that are actually Magic paper judges and actual players of the game. So I know I was optimistic, and the conversations I were having were optimistic about, hey, how is this going to change for the positive? But at the end of the day, PQ is very different than paper. It's not the same game. It does not work the same way. We could talk about mechanics and stuff at another point, but for me, just as an example, is the exhaust mechanic, right? Like a card comes
Mhm.
into play in paper, I do the exhaust mechanic, it triggers for that card one time. But the other cards I play that are the same card, I have multiples on the board, can then exhaust. They're not limited by this other card. In our game, they stack, so there's no way to do the exhaust multiple times. So that doesn't quite work. Like that's a whiff. And I personally want to see them this year do more to account for that. So there's a long way of me winning for this. I believe the devs are still the best devs we've had to date. I'd like your thoughts on that. Do you feel that? Do you feel differently? Where's your I could say the faith in the devs, but I think I guessed that. But just go ahead and share with folks, just in case they lived under a rock and don't know your views on that. Why don't we start there?
I believe the phrase "shower of bastards" usually comes up when I'm talking about the devs. That's not what I think about them really at the currently. I I don't think they're too bad, but I was never really on board with this idea that they were so much better than Octagon. I
Hmm.
mean, Octagon really checked out towards the end of their reign,
Yeah.
and Webcore came in and they did the same types of things that Octagon did when they started. They were writing like blog posts and things. Octagon did those things when they
Hmm.
started, but eventually fell off the wagon, and it became obvious that they were going. And it didn't take long for me to think that Webcore are not the sages of this game. They're just another dev team, to be
Right.
perfectly honest. And I think the first thing that really hit me was the number of mistakes they would make running coalition events.
Hmm.
There were a lot last year. It was really felt to me like every time there was a first run event,
Hmm.
there would be something wrong with it. And that might have been a catastrophic bug, like with, you know, when we were matching, what event was that? When we were matching the event support and the game would immediately freeze. That was the worst
I
one we
felt like it
had.
was a call time, but I don't know. Was it a legacy event or was it a standard event? Do you remember?
I'm pretty sure it was a legacy event,
I think
but
it was a
maybe
call
it
time
was
event with the tokens. Guys in the chat, if you remember what event that is, if you're still traumatized by that, therapy, share your trauma with us, man. I'm pretty sure it was
but
a call time
you know,
event.
it, the mistakes they made were never always as bad as that, but there was usually something wrong with it. Even if they were just misreporting
Hmm.
the objectives, or if the objectives weren't working properly, there
Hmm.
was a constant string of problems in the coalition of it. And they were always things that they could have caught if they'd have play tested once.
Yeah, I, I, I,
Playtesting's always been a problem with this game.
it is. This is a complete. Like we could do a full meet and
Yeah.
discussion on this alone, as far as like what do we think their structure is, because this is my opinion, Steve. They like we've talked before and requested a lot, which I still think is a fabulous idea. A small group of playtesters to give feedback on cards, pros, cons, goods, bads, whatever. And the general, and again, I want to say this clearly. Everything I'm going to say is pure speculation. I literally have no insights on anything from the devs. They don't tell me. I have to give this disclaimer almost every time I do any kind of talk where I'm speculating. So thanks for that. But just to be clear, this is all just me guessing based on my watching all of their interactions, everything that the public has seen, and based on that, I don't think our player base is bigger than 5,000 people actively right now. Maybe 10, but I would be hard pressed to believe that. I'd like
Yeah.
your guess on that. But that said, that's normally a testing grounds for most other games. To give it to about 10,000 people to go play test, maybe 1,000 or two, um, or just some type of small beta group to go test stuff out. That said, I argue and I think that the full player base of the game right now, is the testing crew. Um, and
Oh, no,
is
I would agree with that, and that would make sense. And that might not even be so bad if, when the sets were released and
mhm.
we reported all the bugs to them, which are inevitably there, if they then went and fixed them. But they
Yeah,
don't do that a lot, do they?
yeah. Well, that leads to a
We're still
secondary
living with bugs
question.
from years ago. Jesus
Yeah,
Christ, will they ever get round to fixing Endless Detour? It's not
yeah.
even in standard anymore.
Yeah, and I think there's a priority list. So again, just me and
Yeah,
you at the bar having a beer talking. I'd be like, bro, I don't think they have 8 people on this game. I would be shocked if they have 5, 6 people, maybe a couple devs, a couple people front facing. I don't know. Maybe there's more. Maybe if Webcore is watching this, they're just laughing at us. Like, of course we've got like 10, 15
actual
people on.
programmers, I maybe about 3. Who
I
knows? But
that's where I
could
am.
be really low.
That's
Could
what
be
I
really
am.
low.
I think it's at or less than what Octagon had. And clear, like you said, Octagon checked out towards the end. Like the last 6 months, boy, they were on life support just to keep the thing not, just to keep it from imploding before, to the point where we were like, what can we do as the player base to go bring in new players? At least I was
Sure.
trying to just like, we got to
Yeah,
band
there
together
were
and figure this out,
We had
guys.
big recruiting drives going on in FTA. Do you know what I
Yeah,
mean? So we did notice that players dropped off. You can tell, can't you, because of the leaderboards on events. People are always watching out for when the brackets flip on events because you can get a little
never
advantage
happens
by
now.
doing that.
Yeah,
And when the brackets start to flip later and later, that's how there
yeah.
are less players playing the game.
For sure.
You know,
And how many times at a 3,000 bracket size that just never flips? We have maybe 2,000 people actively playing in
we
a
are
coalition
getting that at
event,
the moment,
right?
definitely.
And so, which is why I venture a guess of maybe 2,000, let's say 2,500, 3,000 active coalition players. And then in
Maybe.
addition to that, maybe another 2 or 3, double it for just non-coalition members, like casual players. Okay, but not much more than that from the person that maybe opens the app every couple of months or stuff just to kind of check stuff out. I don't know. I don't consider that an active player in my opinion, but that's my view on it. All right, so let's talk a bit about the current standard meta. I mean, the dev team is who they are, for better or for worse. I think we can all agree on this too, is that they said, hey, here's Mana Echoes episode 1 or issue 1, right? We'll see you
Yeah.
in when? What's the time frame, Steve?
Is it 2 weeks?
It's 2 weeks, so it'll be this upcoming Friday. And I
Yeah.
said this.
Set my watch.
I said that to Main Loop. I said everybody, and it
Yeah.
said click click. They're setting
Yeah.
their
Yeah.
watches, wanting to be have our fears put to rest. We want to be reassured that they're going to do what they say they're going to do. And that at the end of the day is all that it is. And I understand in this game, especially with as limited, as perceivably limited people they have working it, that they have to be careful with what they can promise to and deadlines they can set because just as well as I do, as understanding as many of us will be, there's always going to be those but you said and blah and throw their shit and break stuff. Right. So with that
Yeah.
said, that is what it is. But the current state of standard is a very interesting situation for me to look at because I think you know this. I love power stuff. I like go fast. I like to go fast. I like to win turn 1. I love broken, loopy stuff. Not everybody's a fan. I get it. Um, because of that, I like playing with powerful things that allow me to do things that are fun. Not everybody likes that. I'm not such an a-hole though about it that I never subscribe to the point of, hey, I don't care what you think if it loops or whatever. I'm having fun with it. That's not it. If it's breaking the game and if it's doing things that's causing most other folks to not enjoy the game because it's actually, and this is where I draw the line, because it's actually impacting their win rates, right? Because it's actually
Mm,
keeping them from achieving their points or the way that they play casually to collect rewards and to mine resources, or on weekend events this same damn thing keeps popping up and we keep losing points as a team because this thing's broken or this card's too easy to do. And again, the other line I draw is that Greg can manipulate it in a way that he doesn't have to think, and it impacts everybody that plays against him. It's going to win. That to me is broken, right? I think that's too far.
sure.
Counterpoint. I also view the game as a game of solitaire. I've said this many times. I'll say it to you directly. I think
Oh
this
yeah,
game is
yeah.
solitaire, right? I play this game the way I want to play this game. You play the game the way you want to play the game. And as long as my fun isn't interfering with your fun and vice versa, within reason, this is where the gray area comes in. I think that's fine. But when that line starts to get drawn, it's like, where is that? Now, the current state of standard for me is on the edge. I'm looking at it. I'm like, we're getting real close to being off the side of too much. Um, However, I don't want to lose my toys, if that makes sense. I like my things, but I would really like you to talk about
We
your
all
view of
love
standard.
power creep, don't we? This is the thing. We all
Yeah,
love to play with the powerful cards. It
yeah,
feels so good when you're power creeping. But as the great Patrick Chapin once said, you cannot power creep forever. You can't just keep pushing the power level up and up and up, because power creep creates overpowered cards. It's difficult to define what an overpowered card is, but we all kind of think we know when we see it. We might not agree about some of them,
right.
but I mean, I think you can look at mystical teachings
Yeah, my
and
card.
say this card is just a lot better than Talent of the Telepath. Do you know what I mean? I think it's I
Yeah,
think it's uncontroversial to say that we're in a period of power creep at the moment. Like, whether or not that's a good or bad thing, I think we might disagree on.
yeah.
But I think it's uncontroversial to say that it's happening, and cards, the top end, the powerful cards of the game are getting more powerful in standard.
So where will you draw the line for it's power creep to a point of, okay, it's too powerful or the meta is too broken?
I mean, for me, really, it comes down to uh, at how fast people are winning the game, right?
Okay,
Now, for you, the important thing is how fast Greg's winning the game. If Greg's winning the
right,
game on turn two all the time,
right.
yeah, people hate that. We had this situation with, uh, oh, well, GTA was a big one, wasn't it? People hated coming up against GTA with
Yep.
Galter, and they ended up nerfing Atraxa and Thunderous Debut and the Blossoming Tortoise as well.
And Galta
Uh,
ish.
and
There's four,
Galter.
all four cards in that combo got nerfed. Every single one of them.
Galter probably needs another. Do you remember they nerfed Rocco like 4 times before he eventually started being broken? I think
Well, stop
Galter could
being
do with
play.
at
I think
least
the word you're looking for is playable, not broken.
play. Yeah, no,
Playable.
you're right. They probably went over the top there in
That
the end.
last one was way too much, man.
But I think they could do with nerfing Galter maybe just one more time. But
I'm leaning in your camp. I know that originally I was just talking with some of the other team members in main loop as well. That could you imagine this meta without Galta being nerfed, with her ability to come in and do what she does every single summoning, that she's able to convert the
she's
board.
such a big shadow over the entire
She
entirety of standard. The fact that she might come out,
yeah
and she's not just going to leave a 15-15 body on the table. She's going
no
to leave herself. She'll probably put another creature out. She'll probably put some supports out. She fills up your loyalty.
yep.
She gives you such a huge advantage, you
She
know.
is the meta in my opinion, and again, I think most of the viewers here would know I'm not very quick to nerf. I think she definitely is at the top of my list to say, hey, we need to have a conversation. Well, second in line. We'll talk about the first one here in a minute. But actually, as far as impact to the meta, I think she is it. I think if you're facing a green opponent, the double whammy is Galta is beast. She's going to convert. She's a big body. She does all the things you want. The only thing she doesn't have is haste. Thank God, or else the outcry for
Yeah.
her would have been just
Well,
obliterated. It was,
Bloodgast is coming, Goz.
yeah,
Bloodgast is
I
going to
don't
be a
have it.
thing in
I
Standard
have it. I
2.
don't have it. I haven't played with it, so I don't know firsthand. I hear you. I hear
Yeah.
Nalthazar and Maine. They're talking about it like, hey, this card's pretty dope. I look at it at
It's
the eyeball
the
test.
real
It
deal.
doesn't pass to me, but we'll see. I'll play it with Grist and see what it's when I get it. I should
Gather
have
the
it next week.
pack, Goz. Yeah,
Okay,
put 4
gather
of
the
them in
pack.
your graveyard.
Okay.
Put them all out at the same time. 40 damage with haste. That's what we're talking about.
Yeah, I still don't think that's
No?
bad. That's level. Well, okay, we'll get into that here in a minute. Here's the other point
Okay.
that I wanted to make with it. I think that with Galta doing what she does and hitting the board, like Grist, we had a big conversation online about Grist.
Yeah, yeah.
And I kept saying, I don't think she needs it. Now here we are, about a month or two later, and you don't. I don't. I'd like your thoughts on it. I don't see her as much in the field. I think people bored with her. She doesn't make her less powerful. I think she's still obscenely powerful. She's really strong. Second strongest walker in the game, in my opinion. Um, but she's not the issue, in my opinion. Still, it's Galta. Her ability to get Galta out and do that conversion, do all the things that Galta does, that just blows my mind in how strong she is. That's why I think Galta nerfed makes the Grist conversation less significant. You've brought up though, and I'm inclined to agree. This comes down to the devs that okay, when from this point forward, the devs then have to be mindful of what creatures they put in green that enable Grist to be that strong. You're right.
It's
And
not just Galta, Goz, right? We've got Galta, Rakdos. People hate playing against
Rakdos
Rakdos,
is a different. Yeah,
That's another very big one for
yeah,
Grist. And now we've got Bloodgast as well. Grist plays Bloodgast
yeah,
extraordinarily well,
yeah.
you know? So I don't think you can say that Grist, that Galta is going to be the only problem we have with Grist. You know, every time there's something big that Galta can drag out of the graveyard for 6 loyalty, I think we're going to have this conversation. And that's why I personally still think Galta needs to be busted down a little bit.
Grist, you're saying Galta, but you mean
Grist
Grist.
needs to be Galted. Yes,
Right.
sorry.
No, I knew what you meant. I just want to make sure the viewers are clear.
Yeah.
I'm at a stage right now, Steve, just in all honesty, where in facing Grist a few times, her secondary ability is very generous. The ability to destroy supports, because the counter
Way
to her
too
is
good.
control, right? The counter to her is just control. Aegis is kind of the thing. For me,
It's
at least.
not though, is it? It's not. Aegis is not good enough. You know, in the previous iteration of Standard,
Mm-hmm.
you know, you could build up a presence on the board
Mm-hmm.
so that whatever, you know, shenanigans Galta came out with,
Mm-hmm.
you would be prepared to deal with it, you know. But like Grist
Without
can just
haste.
blow all of that away. You used to be able to put a few supports on the board and be
Mm-hmm.
like, well, okay, I'm now facing 50 powers worth of creatures attacking me, but at least I've got some board presence still.
Right.
And Galta's just very good at just blowing that all away, you know, any board presence you used to
Galta
have.
for
I mean,
sure.
I kind of rely on requisition rate now, you know, 1-for-1 removal
Not
is
good
dead
enough.
to me.
It's
Instead,
not
I
good
used
enough.
to play Void Rend. I used to play Endless Detour in Standard. It's all dead to me now because cards like Galta create too much of an advantage for me to be able to pull back with a 1-for-1. I am more of a control player. I should probably say this, you know, because I like to be able to control what's going on the board. And I was always happy playing with these 1-for-1 cards like Void Rend and Endless Detour.
Mm-hmm.
But those control cards have power crept as well, and people aren't happy about it. People aren't happy with the existence of Rakdos. It's too good for them. People do not like Assimilation Agent. I don't like playing against Assimilation Agents.
No one likes playing against them, but everybody likes playing with them. Everyone likes playing with
them, yeah. But that's the thing of power creep, isn't it? We like the cards until they make a mess of the game.
Yeah. Well, and guys, you guys chime in here. It might be that the way you never make mass gen conversion cards anymore. This is my concern for Green. Green's kind of core personality is mass conversion, in my opinion.
Is it?
I've always looked at it that way. Coming from paper, right? Ramping, getting lands onto the board, and then playing PQ.
Mana ramp in paper is nothing like mass conversion in Puzzle Quest.
We can discuss that at another time, but for me, in paper Magic, the difference in 2 or 3 lands is much different in Paper Magic and the impact it makes. I mean, Christ's sake, let's talk about Dark Ritual, turn 1 Dark Ritual, right? In Paper Magic,
Yeah,
good game. It's over.
yeah,
You lose.
yeah.
Mana
But that's
Vault
why they
or
stopped making cards like that.
right. And so that note is in turn 1, what we're doing now, what I'm doing now, and I think what you did too in your build, which we'll look at here in a minute, is Mystical Teachings, 9 mana,
Always.
right,
Very
into
cheap.
Tempt with Discovery. And now you've got
Yeah,
your
yeah,
green
that's
conversion,
very
right?
good. Yeah,
So that is a turn 1. And if you only have 3 spells in your build, uh, mystical, tempt, and then insert power card, win card, whatever that third option is. Typically draw free, lock and load, breach
that's
the
a good one.
multiverse, right?
Yep.
Whatever color scheme you're playing. Now you're in a position where you're just constantly doing what you want to turn 1. Is that too powerful? It is very powerful, and I want to bring this back to what we were talking about beforehand about what is good for standard. Is I like that power, turn 1 to do that, because it's fun for me, especially when it's a game that I'm just collecting resources. Like if it's quick battles or it's a PvE event, and it's not a coalition event, for example. I like that ability to speed and go do my thing, especially in Legacy. Like I win turn 2 every time in Legacy. Like that's broken, right? I get it. And it should be broken. It's a place for broken. It's fine. Standard should have some balance. I agree. I don't disagree with this. I agree. Are we at a stage though? So that my counter argument is this: I like to have that power in standard. Can Greg pilot that power in standard because he doesn't prioritize spells? He prioritizes creatures first, and then supports, and then spells. Is that what you understand?
I think so. I never really figured out whether he did supports and then spells, or whether it was always just creatures first and he didn't care about the rest of it. But yeah, always creatures first, we
Yeah.
know that.
So if you have creatures in your build, like a Galta, you have a couple of turns to go do your stuff, and then counterbalance, get your control out, do whatever you're going to do. I like Steal Your Girl. I don't know if you're aware of this, but I love Steal Your Girl. So, what's the spell? Confiscate. So I take all your things. They are now mine. Again, another 9 mana spell. Not as powerful as I think people make it out to be, but it is still really, really good. My point. Greg doesn't execute at that level yet, but I would be completely naive if I said we're not close to him being able to do that on a regular basis. I think we're in a realm now, meta-wise, where it really comes down to the deck builder. So if the deck builder figures out a quick, easy way to build a thing that works synergistically, case in point, like Startled Awake. If I'm only running Startled Awake creatures or creatures like Startled Awake that hit the board, give mana, and start charging and doing things up in your hand that start the loop, for example, there's no doubt Greg's going to prioritize that creature, and that's going to be bonkers broken. I argue with his Cascades, Galta is that right now. With as much conversion as you get, he's going to get Galta out maybe turn 1, turn 2, maybe turn 3 max. And once that happens, GG. He can, if the deck's built right, it can allow him to just start cascading and crushing the board presence. And like you said with Grist, being able to control you with their second ability to go and take out your support so you have no control. She's just the perfect fight against control, which is why I love her, because I hate facing Aegis. I hate facing suppression bonds. I hate facing all those disable things, right? And I want to be able to have a good counter against that, even if I don't have cards that can go after it. The biggest control I'm seeing right now are hand hate ones. That's another one that people aren't really talking enough about until they see like, oh, now it's happening. There's Alcatrazats, which is hitting your hand, which is making you ditch cards, whatever that one is. Of course, you have the masterpiece in Origins that hits cards off the top of your hand. So if they throw in a little hand hate into their control builds with these kinds of walkers, bro, they're a nightmare to face. In fact, the only time I lose in coalition points for them, unless I'm an idiot, are those kind of control-y long 10, 12, 14. The longer they go, the more my odds go up that, damn it, I'm going to lose because this control deck's got all its anchors in place and I'm done. And it's really tough to come back. Thoughts on everything I just said, please.
Well, there's a lot to unpack there, isn't there? I mean, Yeah, I mean, I've always been into hand hate. I really enjoyed playing time reversal in the last iteration of standard. I don't mind the fact if the cards that I use, I've liked playing Days Undoing in the past. If the cards that I use just take the mana out of Greg's hand, I don't really mind if he gets cards back. That's really kind of the important thing for me. But you know, hand hate is becoming less relevant as well. You're like, you know, a few months ago, I'd be trying to start off my games in standard by casting a Golden Wish,
Mm-hmm.
and it be, you know, it would be quite dangerous if I got hit by an Infinite Obliteration. I might lose
Mm-hmm.
quite a lot of mana bill that
Mm-hmm.
I've been piling into this Golden Wish. That doesn't happen anymore now because my Golden Wish costs 9 mana now, doesn't
Right.
it? You know,
Right.
there's Mystical Teachings is such a huge leg up in power.
It
That
is.
I don't think I think it's getting ahead of hand hate, you know? Like
Mm-hmm.
if you put your stuff on the table, no amount of infinite obliteration is going to save you at that point, you know. That's why I've always kind of considered infinite obliteration to be like a bit of a tier 2 strategy, to be perfectly honest,
Yeah.
because if you can just get ahead of it, and the power cards we've got at the moment will allow you to get ahead of
Yeah.
it, you
Yeah.
know, or at least, you know, if somebody does make you discard a mystical teachings, you haven't lost too much mana, you've not fallen too far behind, you know, because
Yeah.
it was so cheap. The most mana you could have lost is 8 from having it discarded. There's probably not going to be that much, you know.
Well, with everything being so much lower to the ground now, that 8 matters because 8 in a mystical teachings versus a 8 in like well, like you said, a
Yeah,
golden
but it's
wish,
8
right?
against 6, you know, like I say, if I've lost 8 mana to the 6 mana they played against an infinite obliteration, you know, the new infinite obliteration creature that
Mm-hmm.
cost 10 mana,
Mm-hmm.
so he was already had to spend more mana than I had.
Right.
I've lost on my
My
mystical
counter to
teaching.
that is, but Greg cascades like a damn fool. So does mana really matter to him as much as it matters to you and I playing? So this is a separate conversation that I think is worth
Yeah,
having.
yeah.
Is the mana cost to us is not the same mana cost it is to Greg. When we're in competitive events and that it feels like there's a dial, like it's loser, mid competitive and wreck, right? Like that's the swaps that Greg can make.
I think you're getting into a bit of tin foil
So
hat territory
so
here.
why I think this is because if I play in PvE events against like fox punching, right? We're going through what's the name of the event? I don't even know the name of the event anymore. I just call it fox punching.
Fateful Showdown.
Fateful Showdown. So if we're playing Fateful Showdown, you're gonna tell me that swap order in that one is the same at level 1 as it is in the final level. You're gonna
Yeah,
say
I
that
kind
it
of think it is
avoids
actually.
5 matches. I've had it in plenty of times in that node specifically as an example, not make 5 matches. It will make very minuscule matches, right?
But I watch Greg do that all the time. Greg,
I think there's
I
an
think
algorithm. I think there's an
my
algorithm
theory
to
is
it.
that Greg plays completely at random in almost all levels, yeah? And that's why you'll see him sometimes not take match 5s and sometimes plays and takes match 5s. I think Greg just looks for a random move that he can find on the board and he takes it. The
So
original version of Greg used to prioritize match 4s. He used to go after your
your colors,
supports. You could
yeah,
see the
right.
strategy. But I don't know about you, but I've never really been able to identify any kind of strategy that Greg has with his gem board play at the
I
moment.
still think he goes after your supports. There are plenty of times where he has in color matches he won't take and will take your one off supports, which in many cases now there's a
But
lot of supports that are it's beneficial. So it's like great, thank you.
I cannot convert these theories into any kind of predictability to Greg. In the early days of the game,
Mm-hmm.
I could predict what Greg was going to do and I
Mm-hmm.
could make my moves accordingly, and then he would do that thing. I
Here.
cannot do that now. Any hypothesis I have about the way that Greg definitely plays,
Mm-hmm.
Greg will pop that bubble within a few games, you know?
So
So
here's the
I'm
reason why
convinced he kind of plays at random.
we will have to sit down and all you smart people, like I have a section in my server that says Shuffler's broken, right? And it
Yeah,
also,
yeah.
we kind of go, or the Shuffler's fine. And then we go in there and we'll make comments too about the gem cascades. What I have noticed without fault is not necessarily the gems that are matched on the board, but then what falls from out of view and then match. There are a lot of times I'll see him, if not take an obvious match, right?
Right, we're fully into tinfoil hat
Right.
territory here,
We'll
guys.
we'll
But
have to get into
honestly,
this. I'd love to have this
I
conversation.
believe
I
that
will
all of
have to
those
gather the
things are
data.
random as well. But to get back to what we were saying, what the reason we got onto this is you were saying that, you know, actual concrete mana values don't matter so much because
Well, because of his cascades.
paper magic, you know, you're always getting that you're playing one land, you're slowly building up your
Right.
mana, and the amount of mana that you get a turn is not random, you know.
Yeah.
Whereas in this game, yeah, you do. You make a move, you might get a cascade. The amount of mana you get from a single swap can vary wildly, you
Yeah.
know. But
Yeah.
I still think it does matter that some cards are 3 times as expensive as other cards, though, doesn't it? It's
Yeah, that's a significant
it's
bearing. But
possible that Greg will play a Genesis Wave on turn 1. It's much more likely he will play a Mystical Teachings on turn 1.
true, and that goes back to, you know, guessing at what he prioritizes as you know, if he's got a fistful of spells, what does he put at the top? Does he base it based on cost, or does he go after you know, rarity? We don't know. That's something that I don't know that we could know or we could figure out. If you guys have thoughts on that, definitely let us know. But let's take the tin hat off for a second, and let's ask this question. Do you feel Greg cascades more often than the player does, even when we're engineering doubles and triples into it? Or do you see that's even?
Honestly, I make better moves than Greg does.
Okay.
Yeah. I find these days I can really lock Greg down with Nicol Bolas. You know, the Vanguard Nicol Bolas, the one that drains 6 mana from his hand.
Right.
I find Greg can get really stuck under one of those.
Yeah.
I was not too into this card when it was spoiled. I thought, why am I going to want to spend 20 mana on this card to try and get ahead? It does seem a bit silly. But then, you know, then I discovered that I could play it with Golden Wish, you know, and get loads of extra advantage. And then I discovered that I could play that with Mystical Teachings and put it into play for 9 mana. All of a sudden, Nicol Bolas is starting to look really good.
Absolutely.
And I find I can really lock him down with that. I don't know if you know this, Goz, but this kind of blew my mind a while ago. Lars, shout out to Lars, one of the finest assets in the game.
He's amazing.
He told me something that yeah, just blew my mind. That if you take a planeswalker with fairly average mana bonuses, that would be Nicol Bolas 3 was the one that he tested. The average amount of mana you get from a swap, including match fires and cascades, if you take the best move on the board as a player, is 15. I thought, that's ridiculous. That's really high. The average amount of mana you get in a single move is 15. That is true, actually. I did some testing myself and I discovered that that's true. And I think Greg gets less than that on average. Sure, he does get big cascades.
Yeah.
You know, I kind of like the fact that he gets big cascades.
I think it makes it fair.
He's a dumb player.
Yeah.
He's a dumb player. I like the challenge of when Greg does well. And the fact that he gets a big random cascade sometimes puts him ahead. And I like that. And I'm playing
it makes it challenging. And this goes back to what we talked about beforehand, is like win rates in the game are what we're talking about. But if we're winning all the time, it's not a game anymore. It's just us. And again, why do we play? We want to win.
I want to really home in on this because this is what's really, really important to me as a spike. Yeah. People know what player demographics are, yeah?
Well, let me explain. Let me take a second and explain it. Or actually, so I'm a looper. I'm aggro. I guess you would consider me an aggro player. I want to win fast.
Well, I think I never really could decide whether you were Timmy or a Johnny, but I would say maybe you're a Timmy Johnny combo.
Yeah. I'm an aggro Timmy, or I'm an aggro Johnny. Timmy is a guy that likes big creatures. I don't mind big creatures. Yeah. I like big creatures when they serve my wind speed, right? That's my aggro approach. I'm a Johnny where it comes down to loops and synergies, and I like to brew. I like
making a machine that works together. That is fun. Yeah.
And in addition to that, I like to make untouched machines. Now, this is for a lot of folks. Well, you're not interacting with the game. They get offended, Steve, when I say this. Is like I like to make a swap and then set my phone down, finish flipping my eggs over. Okay. Finish my breakfast preparation, click stop loop, win game. That's fun for me because I built it. I built a machine that wins. Not because that's my only source of enjoyment. I like other times where I'm interacting, making decisions and yada yada, but I like making automatic win buttons. not to the detriment of the group, but that's what it is, and that's a Johnny and a breed of a Timmy aggro. So
Yeah.
you are a Spike. Please tell me, what is a Spike, sir?
Well, I mean, a Spike is basically just somebody who wants to win the game. Essentially, they want to use all the best tools available to them at any point. You know, competition is the important thing. Feeling like they're a good player. You know, Lars, again, bless you, Lars. He maintains like a leaderboard where he gives players rankings based on how they've been doing in coalition events. I'm always checking that thing. You know,
Yeah.
we have a channel for it on our Discord. You know, every couple of days somebody's going in saying, I wonder how I rank compared to all the other players, you know.
Yeah.
Spikes really are driven by a desire to be at the top of that thing, you know. And that is me, you know. I want to win the game, but winning the game has to mean something. If I can win the game all the time by just playing a combo deck that goes off turn 1, turn 2, before Greg has done anything, you know, it loses its meaning to me. And I think, well, why am I even playing this game now? People say to me when I say things like this, well, you're the one making the game less fun for yourself. Don't play those cards, you know? And
that's a fair, that's a fair point, right? If you don't like it and it's not, let me finish this framework for you first, because I know what you're going to say and I want to make sure I'm prefacing it correctly.
Okay.
So my view is, like I said before, if Greg's playing those powerful cards and they're impacting your win rate because you don't get a chance to go or interact or have any kind of back and forth,
that's a bigger problem.
That's broken. That's not loop. That's broken. I concede that wholeheartedly. As much as I love playing with that stuff, I'll even tell Webcore, like, don't mess with this card. Let me play with it before you guys fix it. They're like, what are you talking about? Then we'll get it. I'll play with it. I'll say, yeah, it's completely broken. Please fix this, right? There's been plenty of times they've fixed it before I've gotten it and I didn't get a chance to play with it. But I do enjoy that power. But when it's doing that, it's broken. So now in your case, if Greg's piloting those cards and costing you points and you don't have a chance to play, that's got to be very frustrating, yes? That's the point. However, if you're playing with those cards and you're not enjoying playing those cards because it makes the winning too easy, can't you just not use those and make it a bit more of a challenge for yourself and still enjoy the game? Is the argument that they make, in what I'm hearing at least.
Yeah, well, I mean, this also, I'm going to say what I always say about this. You know, people say to me, well, just don't play with those cards. Play something that you enjoy. And I do. I go and play Slay the Spire instead. You know, there are games out there that are quite happy to curate themselves and balance themselves, you know, and make sure that they aren't broken. And, you know, some of them are better than Magic. Now, paper Magic is always very careful to make sure that it's not broken, that the spikes don't all go, well, why should I care about this game anymore, and all just leave, you know?
Right.
Because there are other games that they could go to.
Right.
You know? And I think that Puzzle Quest, you know, ignores those players at its peril, to be perfectly honest. I've always said that it should be a broad church. There should be a place in the game for Timmies and Johnnies and Spikes, you know? And I think if we just say to the players who care about winning and who care that winning matters, if we just say to those players, well, can't you just, you know, just play it like a big sandbox, like a toy, you know, just don't care about the things that you play with. Well, we just go, well, I'm going to go and play a game that has been well balanced, you know?
Yeah.
And I don't think we can afford to lose players at the moment.
I agree with that 1,000%. I think that here's where we have to all agree on. It's a game. It's supposed to be fun. The challenge is, how is it fun? The fun that you get out of it is very different than the fun I get out of it. Not always. I think I'm also part Spike. I think we're all three. I think everybody's a Johnny, a Timmy, and a Spike.
Yeah,
I think everybody has a mixture.
I mean, look, I do play combo decks that win on turn 2 every week, you know? The last thing I want is for my daily grind to feel like 20 games worth of Colors of Magic. Jesus Christ. Can you imagine that? God.
Oh my God.
Colors of Magic.
Which is already a bit of a grind.
Honestly, one of my favorite events, Colors of Magic, but yeah, too long and control is too good.
Yeah.
And all I'm doing, like you said earlier, when all I'm doing is earning the resources, I'm going to go and fire up my Fire Servant deck.
Yeah.
And I'm going to win count, all of my games and training grounds on turn 2 in
Right.
Legacy. I don't mind Legacy being a broken swamp of combo. I don't even mind combo existing in Standard.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I never minded Wizard class. Wizard class is honestly quite slow to set up,
It is.
isn't it? Do you not
Yeah.
think?
I
Because
actually agree.
sometimes you find yourself playing a draw spell to find a draw spell to find a draw spell. Then you find your wizard class. That's 14 mana. That might be 2 turns.
Yep.
I find it quite slow to set up wizard class.
I find Satoru and Judith faster and stronger. Satoru and Judith comboed are my new standard wizard class, and I actually prefer those in Legacy over my wizard class decks in my alt account. So
I'm aware of those 2 cards, and I do play. I love Judith, actually. Judith is a great card.
Satoru and Judith together.
I've not really put them together. I've not really seen a full-on combo deck that plays with them.
Get into the server. I'll show you a deck.
All right, nice one.
It's my favorite. It's my favorite loop deck because I can control. It's my hand on the trigger. I can fire up my beasts when I'm ready to go, and when my tokens swing, it's game, and it works perfectly. And I hit all my objectives.
Yeah.
I did a live stream yesterday, and I'm like, okay, normally I would play this event with this deck, and I would win everything, but I'm not going to because I don't want you guys to be bored. So let me show you all the different decks you can play in this. We slotted for an hour. We're gonna go. You got a few more minutes here. You good for a little bit more longer?
Yeah, let's keep going. Actually,
okay.
Yeah.
I think all right, good. So we talked about power creep. I think let's put a pin in that and say, I think power creep is for my opinion. I think power creep is very real. I think it's happening. My question isn't about whether or not it's a bad thing or a good thing. I think it's been necessary for the game to have some power cards in it, so it isn't so mundane and boring for new players to come and play that they don't have those. But they also have to be balanced well enough that new players can come in and not get overwhelmed by them. That's the big drive for me.
Well, let me ask you a question, Goz, because I'll be interested in your opinion of this, because I don't find this version of Standard now.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I'm going off Standard now. Now it's post Mystical Teachings, but let's say when OTJ came out and when Bloombrewer was out, right? There was obvious power creep happening then, and I railed against it a bit, and I was rather surprised to find that the Standard environment back then, even with the existence of things like Dragonhawk and Desert and Demolition Field that I didn't like, I was rather surprised to find that I quite enjoyed that Standard environment.
It was good. It was good.
But one thing I would say is that I did not think it was a better Standard environment than before the rotation. I really liked that one as well when I was playing with my Void Wrens and my Endless Detours and my Teferi Hero of Dominaria. What a great control card that was.
Yeah.
I don't think that post-power creep Standard was ever better than pre-power creep Standard.
I don't think it's ever better. Mind you, my last paper deck was a Teferi Hero of Dominaria control deck. The win con is I put my Vanguard, or I put my Planeswalker back in my deck, third from the top, and I just continue to draw it while you deck yourself. That is the most obnoxious form of control you could ever. I love control. I want real counterplay. I want real counter spells in Puzzle Quest. I want to be able to interact.
That'd be nice, wouldn't it?
That would be so amazing. I would love that. That would be so much fun. So back to the point is, the meta isn't better or worse. It's just different. We look for certain archetypes. At least I do, especially in control: deny, destroy, removal, prevent damage, whatever it is, counterplay, flash, removal, whatever that happens to be. And certain things fit into that. A good example of that would be Sleep with the Fishes, right? Okay. What a beautiful card. I cast this once. Your creature's disabled. I'm gonna leave it on the board. I'm not gonna even bother removing it. Greg, waste all your resources putting that next creature on the board. It's just stacking a dead man. It's just a limp body. Fine. There's no replacement for that until recently, now that shields stack, right? Or the disabling thing. Now that stacks, it's not as good. Right. But at least they stack now, and that's one of those things where it's like, okay, that becomes a good, solid replacement for that. Or
Madren's really into stun counters. Madren's my coalition leader.
Right.
He's a very good player. He loves stun counters because he likes to do the Sleep with the Fishes thing.
Right, and that works, and now it's viable. So I think that whatever it is, you're looking for the same impact, and they change. So like Teferi Hero Dominaria, the card, the Vanguard, What is the equivalent of that now? What did it do? It allowed you to draw and gain mana, and then eventually you're just able to exile all the cards that are coming off of there. There were several different cards that do that now. I'm trying to think of which one's in standard now. What do you go to? I'll ask you. What do you do for control for that as a replacement? Have you found a replacement?
I suppose the closest thing I've got to it is Nicol Bolas, to be
Yeah,
perfectly honest, because that does, blow up creatures. I'm putting that into play with Golden Wish. I can cast a lot of Golden Wishes
yeah,
because not only have I got 2 copies in my deck with Golden Wish and Mystical Teachings, but you can play with Chimil, you can play with
yeah,
Kylox's Volt Strider, just keep drawing the damn thing,
yeah,
you know?
yeah,
And you can, it doesn't, so Nicol Bolas doesn't kill supports, but it exiles a hell of a lot of creatures.
yeah.
And then you've got that extra thing where it's slowly locking Greg down by draining mana out of his
Right.
hand.
So it's a good
But
counter
honestly, when
to.
it comes to control, I'm all over Requisition Rage. I want a single card that just blows everything off the board. Chaos Warp's pretty good.
Yeah, it's.
Requisition Raid is the gold standard for me.
I prefer Chaos Warp. And if you guys aren't
Okay.
aware, and then there's another one. Is it Necromantic Necromancy? What is it? What is it? The green one, and then you just need to investigate, and then you can remove the rest of them.
No, Urgent Necropsy, is that
Urgent
what it's called?
Necropsy, yes, that one, and then
Yeah.
Assemble.
Trickier to use that because you've got to collect evidence.
Right. So what I do is
In
I,
simple
I I
terms.
put Assemble with it. So I have Assemble go first, put the tokens on the board, and then that. So I hold those two
Okay.
cards as if they're the same card.
Okay.
That's nowhere in the same category, but they do the same function, which is remove everything. It's a complete board, one-sided board wipe.
Yeah.
And that's what everything is. What is it? The ultimatum. What's the ultimatum that used to do that? Uh,
Ruinous.
Ruinous Ultimatum, right? So everything is, if without Ruinous Ultimatum right now in this standard, 1-for-1 removal is not good enough. Nowhere
Yeah.
near it. In fact, to the point where I'm teaching people in my servers now, I'm going to put some videos out about it. It's like you have to have mass removal because if you don't, even in your like in my peasant builds, I'm always nervous that I could get overwhelmed. Greg could get enough stuff on
Mm,
board, especially against green, that I just my
mm.
1-for-1 removal is just not good enough to deal with it. I want to answer your question. Do I feel standard now is better than what it was before, or this standard, that standard? Well, standard now I think is
Yeah.
better. I enjoy it, but it's also
Okay.
very close to being dangerous. But back in OTJ, I don't think it was better or worse than prior rotation. It was just different. Now, I will say this: Streets of New Capenna, probably my favorite set of all time outside of Hour of Devastation.
I probably agree with that.
The mechanics casualty, the I can't even think of it now. The one that gives you the blue conversion because I haven't played. Cut your losses. Cut your
Cut your
losses.
losses.
Chef's kiss for a looper, for control, for anything you want to do. It was Galta for blue, essentially. It allowed you to do so many things. It was so flexible. Plus, I could kill my creature and just cast it
A
again. It was
lot less
so good.
powerful than Galta, though. I mean, honestly, I gave up playing with Cut Your Losses because it might whiff, and I like a certain degree of certainty. I'm not denying that Cut Your Losses was not a brilliant card,
Right.
but it was a hell of a lot more balanced than Galta was.
Yes, and in loop again, you're talking to a looper. So in my loop decks, if it did whiff, it's okay. I got two more coming behind it. It's not going to on its second or third casting, right?
Oh,
So
sure, because that's what Casualty does for you, yeah. Because you don't cast the one copy, do you? You cast the 2 copies if you do
never.
that.
That's see,
Yeah.
you made the common mistake, my friend, getting in a land war with China. But the second most known is casting casualty without sacrificing a creature to cast it a second time.
Sure, sure.
So with that said, I want to transition real quickly into this next part here. As far as again answering your question, is standard meta any different? I don't think it is, and that's part of the reason why I look at where we are now and where we're pointed at. I think the power creep's been necessary. I've enjoyed the power creep because it fits into my style of play, but I also am not so a-holy that I don't recognize that hey, things are changing. And where I want to really be clear for everybody and just in your opinion is I think that it's at a stage where you can clearly see, hey, this is going to be a problem. I think this card's broken, and there's no way we can look at let's take Mystical Teachings. That's my card. We look at Mystical Teachings and we say, all right, what do we have to do now to dance around this card that's not just going to completely take us over the edge? Because we're close already, and we might already be there. It's just it hasn't permeated enough in the meta to be completely broken. Is it just a 3-card spell combo? Uh, Mystical Teachings, Tempt, insert third card that actually just breaks game completely, and those 3 spells along with this specific combination. Case in point, just let me do it
Well,
here.
I mean, it's interesting that both you and me, we kind of posted about. You made a video about your turn 1 kill the other
It's
week.
on the screen right now. This is it. Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Okay, I see it. And weirdly enough, I posted on the forum. I didn't make a video about it, but I posted on the forums with my turn 1 kill deck,
And this is his.
which is something that,
Everyone, before you go on, I'm sorry, I want to say this. This is with
yeah.
Ted, the Eldrazi Desolation. This is Steve's build of a Worn Turn combo, and he very humbly said on this forum, "Oh, I watched your video. It took you 1 in 8 turns to get a turn 1 win, but mine, Goz, did it 1 in 4. Yes, it did.
Sorry, 2 in 4, guys.
Two. Excuse me.
Two
Two
turn 1
and 4.
wins
I apologize. Two
in
and 4.
4 games. Yeah.
So yes, it's an excellent build. If you guys want to break the game from your side, this is definitely a build I would highly encourage you guys to go play test and go with, because it's a lot of fun. Now, why I'm also encouraging you guys do this, it's got some PM2 card, PMA or PM2, I think that's a PMA. It's got a ton of masterpieces. It's got some capricious Hellraiser, like who went and made that a priority. Phenomenon Investigators is another one that just gives you full mana free. This toss salad of power cards and perfect balance allows you to be able to win really, really quickly. And my counter argument to that is they're not that permeated in the marketplace. I'd love to see a show of hands here. How many people have all these cards and can actually go pull this off versus those that don't? And that's still not an excuse. That just limits its impact in the meta. I want to see those people that do have these playing with both these decks that are just crushing it, so that we can get a real sense of, does this break the meta? Because if I face this in standard, or if I face this in standard play, and I face this in quick battles or events that aren't coalition weekend events, right? Or even in coalition weekend events, and I get wrecked by this thing, that Greg can pilot this, and we get a sense that Greg can pilot this in a way that it's turn 2, turn 3 wins, that's too fast. I think that then that is the bar. And the challenge that we have is, you're predicting the future and saying, I think it's going to be a problem, and I'm looking at it and says, I think you're right. However, my counterpoint is, are you losing to it? And if you're losing to it, and we're seeing that it's happening in great volumes, enough, whatever that number is, we have to figure that out as a mass. Then I agree, we got to do something about it. But if it's strictly, I have a bad feeling about this, that this could potentially be a problem, I think that's premature. Thoughts, Mr. Steve?
Well, honestly, yeah, I do like to get in ahead of things, so I do like to be premature. This deck it's not really a deck to me. This is more like a proof of concept. I was quite surprised when I was able to get 2 turn 1 wins in 4 games. But I've been noticing this trend during my set reviews for the last few sets. I remember thinking, when they made Phenomenon Investigators, I remember thinking, this card fetches the next card in your deck and plays it. Now, if they make 10 cards like that, you've got yourself a real problem, because Greg can play any one card and the combo immediately goes off and you die. Now, at the time when they made Phenomenon Investigators, I thought, well, there aren't 10 cards like that. That's not a problem. But I've been noticing that they keep making them, So when they made Bright Hulk, Bright Glass Gear Hulk in the last set, I thought to myself, well, this is another card that does this. And I counted up 6 cards at the time. While I was doing the set review, I thought, well, there's 6 cards, and they all just fetch the next card in your deck and play it, and they're going to become part of this deck. And so I went public with this deck, and me and some of my deck building homies in our Discord started actually building it. They suggested cards for the deck that I hadn't thought of, like Capricious Hellraiser, like Lock and Load. Lock and Load's a great one because that fills 2 cards full of mana.
Yes.
Like Another Round. And we discovered that, yeah, you can actually build it. You'll be pleased to hear, actually, that the first version that Madren built,
Mm-hmm.
his win condition was full throttle. I know you do like that card, don't you,
That's my
Goz?
win con and my
You
other.
know?
Yeah, it's got 2 win cons, but that's my favorite win con. Yeah.
Now, I went with Coffin Queen as my win condition
Okay.
for giving the creatures haste. So speed you up by a turn.
Right.
Because that also counts as a card that, fetches the next card in your deck. Now, some of these don't necessarily fetch the next card in your deck. You can't start with another round, for example, because you've got no creatures in play yet.
Right.
You can't start with a Capricious Hellraiser because you've got no spells in your graveyard yet.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Phenomenon Investigators, weirdly enough, Greg can't play it. Now, I kind of hate the way that Greg can't play it, but I know some people really enjoy the fact that Greg can't play it. I think that's a really kind of terrible way of balancing the card myself.
Yeah.
Like, when we nerfed Galter,
Mm-hmm.
right? If we'd have, instead of saying it can only trigger once a turn, if we'd have written on the card, Greg can't play with this card, that would have felt like a real cheat to me, wouldn't
Yeah.
it? And that's
Yeah.
basically what we've got with Phenomenon Investigators. It kind of says players can loot with it, but Greg can't,
Right. Right.
But I think that we have to recognize that they keep printing new cards like this in every set. And these cards are getting better. One of the most powerful card in my particular build is also, I think, the most recent, which is Mystical Teachings.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Now, they haven't made another card in the later set that's as powerful as Mystical Teachings. They have made a card. Bright Glass Gear Hulk is another card, fetches the next card. It will go into this deck.
Right.
The only reason I'm not playing with it is because I can't afford to spend $80 on it.
Yeah.
But I think we have to recognize that they keep making these cards that instantly fetch the next card in your deck and instantly play it. So, for example, Dragon Hawk isn't going to be part of the deck.
Mm-hmm.
You're not guaranteeing that the combo continues there. It
Yeah.
doesn't give you a card full of mana until the end of the turn.
Right.
But they keep making these cards. They keep making them cheaper.
Yeah.
We've apparently reached critical mass now. This is what my deck demonstrates. It's not that this is the best build of this deck,
Mm-hmm.
but that we've reached critical mass and it's possible now. And as they keep making these cards, well, I'm going to be able to leave out cards like Phenomenon Investigators that Greg can't play. Yeah, I can leave out cards like Capricious Hellraiser as we get more and more of them. And it won't take long, I don't think, until Greg can pilot this deck. Any one card that Greg plays, he will end up with very large creatures on the table.
Yeah.
And that will basically be the same as Danither, Blade of Shared Souls. Yeah. He might. The thing about Danny Boss is that Greg didn't usually have any form of haste. You could put Tyvar in the deck and have some form of haste.
Yeah.
Greg didn't usually do that. What he usually did was he just, played a very large creature, and then he had a very large creature on the table to hit you with next turn. He was set up to keep doing. Anytime he finished because the loop ended, he was always set up to do it again.
Right.
And that is what this deck will do.
Yeah.
But this deck will let Greg do that when, we eventually reach a critical mass of Greg playable cards. That will end up without having to find the Danither to start it off. You'll just be able to play anyone, anything. Now, I know you think that, if Greg has choices, like Genesis Wave is a card that gives you a choice as a player.
Right.
So Greg can make a bad choice as to which card he fetches
in
off
this
that
deck?
card. But if you've got 10 cards in the deck that all just fetch the next card, it will, in this particular deck, Greg can fetch a Phenomenon Investigators. That puts an end to his loop. But, that's why I'm going to cut that card as soon as they make a different one that I can.
I agree with everything you've said, and I want to add to it a couple of different things, a couple of different perspectives for folks to consider here. And then I want to go through the comments before we wrap up, because I'd like to get some, I just don't want this to be a conversation everybody's kind of voyeuring. I'd like to get some engagement from them as well. So ask your questions. What do you guys want to ask Steve? I will ask him your questions. We'll get some feedback from him. Let's pick his brain, guys. Let's bleed him dry. Come on.
There it is.
So my point here is this, is that 2 cards on here, if we stuck with a 2-year rotation, would be out of your deck. Capricious Hellraiser and Breach the Multiverse would already be out, just at quick glance. And that would change the dynamic of the build slightly. That doesn't completely make it
Quite a lot,
unbroken,
to be
right?
honest. Yeah. Yeah.
But Capricious Hellraiser is one of those cards that's broken in sense that if you just have that and Mystical Teachings, GG. I mean that you win. That's the way that works.
Mm, mm,
So I agree with that, but at the same time, I think that one of the potential fixes is we're on a 3-year rotation versus a 2-year rotation, and that matters for Puzzle Quest because again, like we started this conversation, PQ is not paper. It's very different. And because of that, they're designed to be powerful. And well, two big differences. The rotation, the game is different. We have limited space on board for creatures, so those creatures got to do 2 or 3 things when they hit the board, right? They got to do
mm.
something big.
Yeah.
Additionally, we only have 10 cards in a deck, so we can't create a lot of variation in the deck. If we were to water our deck size down, let's say it was 20 cards, right? And we could pick 2 of each card max, we could still build this deck, but realistically we would add other things to it. Maybe that would change it, maybe it wouldn't, or if we had to make them 20 unique cards that go in, it would completely change the dynamic of the game. Um,
Mm.
that's something that's probably far-fetched, right? Like that's something I've been talking and asking for. Like I would love a version of the game where we can do 20 cards in a 20 card build. I think that would be amazingly fun. That would completely change. It would change the game completely, in my opinion, and what we could do with it. I think it would be
Yeah.
fun, or it could be completely broken. I don't know, but I'd like to try that, right?
Well,
I
it'd be more random, isn't it? Like building a combo deck in PQ is much easier than in paper because
because
you've
there's
got
only 10
60 cards
cards.
in paper.
There's only
Yeah.
10
Yeah.
cards, yeah. Where
Yeah.
in paper you got 40 cards, and if you put 1 ofs or 2 ofs in a deck, your odds of pulling those cards off the top are dramatically different. It's a completely different game at that point. So I think
Yeah.
I'd love that concept, but within our
You've got to generate mana. You don't have free mana from the gens in paper. You've got to make it yourself. Imagine that.
so that brings it in. That's a different question. I had a separate thought. I was like, then look at
Go
like games like Monorunes or Spell Slingers or what's the other mobile game that's card based, and it's just 1, and the next turn you get 2, and the next turn you get 3 mana, and it scales up. What is that called? Rune.
Hearthstone does
Hearthstone, thank you. So Hearthstone
Yeah.
works in that way where it's 1, then next turn it's 2, 3. You work your way up. This is a gem matching 3 game, so that's kind of they're not going to change that. But do you think, maybe it's a separate conversation? I think that would be a very different. That would slow play dramatically, would change the game completely as well. But what's within control of the game, which they've already demonstrated, is they can switch from a 2-year rotation to a 3-year rotation. And I think that's something they have to really evaluate and say, hey, is the easy solution to this switching back to a 2-year rotation and then just doing that? Because that doesn't have anything to do with Paper Magic. That's just strictly us as a game that has a very different meta than Paper does. I don't know. What do you think of that?
I was a big advocate at the time, actually, when we switched to the 3-year rotation. I thought that was a good idea because I do think that where we can, we should try and make the game the same as paper. Because honestly, I think we probably get quite a lot of paper players coming into this game, don't we? Paper continues to be very successful, drawing more players into the game these years with its universes beyond things as new players are coming in. I think people have a certain number of players will have certain expectations coming from paper to Puzzle Quest, and I think we shouldn't do fucking stupid things like making life loss and damage completely different from paper when there's no need to make them different.
None.
Anyway,
there are so many different things they do that just make you scratch your head like, why did you do that? That makes no sense. Indestructible is one of my things. If a thing is indestructible, it shouldn't be able to be destroyed. You have to exile it. Not the way in puzzle. It doesn't make any sense. Like, why? Why do that? All right. One more thing, and then we're going to get to your guys' questions, and then we're going to let my man...
No, can I just say quickly, though, that, because I didn't quite finish my point there, did I?
Oh, yeah. Go ahead.
Honestly, I do agree with you. I think it's time to start looking at a 2-year rotation. I think Standard is too big. Not only have we got, a lot more sets in Standard now, there's even more sets coming. They've told us they're planning to do 6 sets in a year and make the sets bigger. We've got 2 Puzzle Masters sets that are very large and do have some very powerful cards in them.
Oh my gosh.
Demon Inferior. My God, that thing.
PM2, just Tamiyo's meets the story circle. If you don't have that yet, Steve, and you can get it at some
I
point,
don't think I do.
that
I'll look
card is
into it. Yeah. All
broken.
right.
It is
Thanks.
so good. That with Inexorable Tide is just unlimited. So if you get a chance to see somebody playing this deck, this is my build, and that's the combo. It's just the Limitless Engine. It just goes nuts. And then one final
I'll
thing
check
I
it out.
wanted to touch base on
Yeah.
this before
Cool.
we move on to this thing is Ocelot's Pride. This is in
Well, this is
PM2.
another example. When I made my post on the forum, that combo deck that I talked about there,
Mm-hmm.
Loop Hero, I called it, was only part of the concerns I had for the state of combo in standard, and just for the state of broken cards in standard. I mean, I think Bloodgast is going to turn out to be a thing, but I'm happy to wait and see with that. Do you know what I mean? I just want I want to get ahead of the curve and say I think Bloodgast is going to be a problem, but we'll wait and see with that.
Yeah.
Ocelot Pride is another thing, isn't it? Now, Ocelot Pride has been in standard for quite some time now, and it is definitely a card that Greg can pilot. Unlike that deck that I've built, that Greg's going to have some problems with at the moment, because all the cards he needs haven't been made yet. Ocelot Pride is here now. It can combo. Greg can do it. And interestingly enough, there is a reason why people aren't losing to it a lot. And that's because it's bastard difficult to get your hands on, isn't it?
I think that's the only reason.
In PM2.
Yeah, I think that's the only reason.
It's a massive set. If this card was in an elite pack, it would be all over the place by now.
Yep.
I've got it. You've got it. I am winning games in coalition events with it.
As you can see by my progress bar in XP, I have not played this deck once.
Oh wow, okay. So you've just got it, but you've not played it yet.
I pulled it about a week or half ago, 2 weeks ago, and I have not played it yet. And the reason is because this goes into something very interesting. I don't like decks like this, where I 2-card combo, I win. I don't think that's fun. I like the puzzle. I like the figure out the algorithm puts this with that, this little known thing. Oh, I didn't expect it to work that way. And then setting the mousetrap together and watching it spring. That's fun. Just 2-card instant wins.
Proper Johnny combo player.
Proper Johnny combo stuff. Yeah, I like to be able to make it a challenge, right? To figure out how to do it. There's no challenge here. It's this with what's the support, life or death or whatever it is, or I forget what it's called.
Life insurance will do it. With Drink a Vampire will do it. There's a couple more cards.
There's a couple. Anyone you gain, creature enters play, and then you add Satoru to this as well, and you're just, you've got a loop deck that's those three doing a thing that you want.
And you've got, we've got, as human players, we've got Threats Undetected, which will fetch this and the card it combos with.
Right. Insane. So this isn't fun to me. I will play it. I'll make a video. I hopefully will be able to put it in front of Webcore and say, hey, this card needs to get changed, because this is one that I think breaks the game. And I have faced this and seen it, and I haven't faced it in coalition play, but I have lost to it in quick battles and some other non-important ones where I'm still going to get my points anyways. So it's been fine.
I'm not really interested in playing this midweek because it is a slow combo. Watching all of the slow animations flying around.
Yep.
I can't be asked with that. I'm, back to Fire Servant if I want a nice fast combo deck to win midweek. But I actually got hold of this deck for Terror in the Shadows, I believe it was. There's a particularly nasty, difficult set of level objectives where you aren't allowed to lose creatures in Terror in the Shadows. And it's quite difficult in standard at the moment to win, to attack Greg if you're not allowed to lose creatures because you fail the objective. And one way to get around that is to just play a combo deck that wins instantly. And Zipfoot, I believe, said to me, well, why aren't you playing this combo deck? And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to do that then. And then I got, in the 6 games I played in that node, I got 4 turn 2 wins, and I'm going to do it because I'm a spike. It's when it comes to competition play, for a while, I'm going to call for this card to be nerfed, but I'm not going to drop down in my overall rankings. It matters to me that I want to
really spotlight this, because this goes to the question I was asking beforehand, where the person's argument was, well, why don't you just not play with it if you think it's unfair, right? And this is the important thing to note about spikes, guys. And I'm kind of the same way, is that, all right, this card shouldn't be in the game, whatever this interaction is, But if there's a threat of me losing points to that, I would prefer to do the thing and win with it than have a threat of losing those points, because the pain of losing points in an event far exceeds the having this thing played against me and losing to it. Is that fair, Steve?
Yeah, I think it is, to be perfectly honest. I mean, it might sound a bit, petty and childish, but, I'm afraid a lot of us spikes do think like that.
Yeah.
I would much rather the game be balanced. I would much rather this card had a nerf. I mean, this is obviously a card that needs one of those trigger limits on it, isn't
Yeah,
it?
3 times per turn, etc., whatever it is.
Obviously a card that needs one of
Yeah.
those, and it's baffling to me that they haven't done it.
And even then,
But
it's still very powerful. If it was 3 times, it's still 9 Johnny Soldier tokens. That's still
yeah.
boss. But the one's weak, but there's other things you could do with it. It could be functional. So we're both in
But
agreement.
while
This
I'm
needs to be
waiting for
limited.
them to while I'm waiting for them to nerf this card, I'm not going to drop down the overall rankings. I'm not going to drop down the overall leaderboard rankings.
There's a
But
member of
other
my
people can play it.
They can. That's losing is for others. There's a buddy of my coalition, Scyther. What's up, bro? He hates Omni. He's calling for it to be nerfed. It's ridiculous. Shouldn't be in the game. And I'm like, leave Legacy alone. I love Omni. And then he gets Omni, and guess what? He plays with Omni. So, well, at least until they nerf it.
I was very similar back in the day with Prism Array. It took me years to get Prism Array because we didn't have elite packs back then, and I hated the thing. And and then I got it, and I've been playing, conversion loot decks with Prism Array for years and years in Legacy now.
Yeah.
So,
but
yeah, Legacy is dead. Leave Legacy as it is.
Absolutely.
Combo players love playing broken decks, and they should be able to do that in Legacy. Combo players love playing combo decks that are interesting, but they should take longer than 1 or 2 turns to set up in Standard.
I don't disagree with that. The only thing is I enjoy the power, and this is, I think, where we have a differing of we're on the same path for most of it, and where we differ in where I draw, it's a matter of where we draw the line. And for me, where I draw the line is if Greg can't pilot it, which is like you said, I agree with your point. That's a terrible barometer, because that just tells to other new players, hey, our AI sucks. Our AI is stupid.
I don't think we want to make a feature of that. I don't think we want to say, yes, all of these cards are broken, but don't worry, because our AI is fucking shit. And that's an awful way to attract players to the game.
Yeah,
we haven't really needed to do it in the past.
Yeah. I think at some point, though, it has to be addressed. And this goes back to what I actually think is when we're going to start messing with Greg, that's a complete UI, that's a complete platform, that's a complete framework rebuild from scratch. I don't think this game can sustain that.
Manu was not popular. If you remember, they tried to make Greg a bit smarter at one point.
Yeah.
They called it Manu. Yeah. That was not a popular move. Yeah. Now, as I understand it, it was only like the moves he took on the gem board that they changed. I don't think they changed his card play, but was not popular with the players. They had to change it back pretty sharpish.
Yeah, and I don't think I saw that, or maybe I did and I wasn't aware of it, but this goes back to why people play the game, right? This is Magic the Gathering, but it's not PvP real time. And if could you imagine, Steve, these cards right now, PvP, where points mattered.
Well, don't forget, Goz, we do have asynchronous PvP in the game. They spent all that time and effort putting real-time PvP in it. What a waste of space that was, eh?
For Coalition, I use it for testing. I only go in it for it works for me because I can spotlight, hey guys, I got this new walker, check out what it does. And I can go test certain things. Or like, hey, I'm trying to figure out if this is a bug, do this thing against me. So it becomes good for that. But I think, honestly, dude, I think there was a moment they were like, we're going to make this go game wide, and we're going to use this for events and points and certain things that are there. And I still want them to do that. However, hear me out. If and when they do that, right? Not for main weekend events, separate, in addition to, nothing that takes that away, right? But something in addition, self-sustaining. When they do that, then you and I are going to have a very different conversation of what's broken in this game. Because then it's a matter of, my one loop.
Because then we're on the same page, really, aren't we?
Exactly. Because we're not facing Greg, an idiot AI. We're facing somebody that's with a malintent to do you harm and doesn't care. And the brilliance here is that in our coalition, because PvP is limited to our coalition, we're not going to be trolls to each other. We're gonna say, hey, I still gotta live with that guy. I still gotta play with
Yeah,
her,
yeah,
right? But if
yeah,
it's PvP
yeah.
kids and it's a random name, I don't know who that is. People are gonna be brutal with each other, and that's gonna change the dynamic of the game very, very quickly. So put a pin in that.
Well, it's worth considering that even without bringing asynchronous PvP into the game, you know,
Mhm.
they could put some effort into like separating the players out. You know, it's like they could just have the really experienced
Yeah.
players play against Manu, yeah,
Hmm.
and have all the newbies play against Greg.
Or
We've got
make it
this very
optional.
random matchmaking
Yeah.
system at the
How
moment,
about making it taking
and
the
it
same
doesn't have
deck?
to be like that.
Well, that's what I was
Hmm?
gonna say. How about we just take the same deck, same stuff we have now, and just have a hardness setting? I want to go play against I
Yeah.
want to go take this deck against that and see what it does. That would be
I
great.
think they really could have like a specific event and put a too hot for TV banner on the
Yeah.
top of it.
Oh, that would
You
be
know what I
great.
mean?
That would be
Only go
great.
in here if you want a real challenge, you know?
Yeah, yeah. And don't
And
make it
that could be like
coalition
a fun
weekend
thing to.
event. Make it
Don't make it coalition. Everyone
yeah.
would hate that.
Make it
But
during the
doing it
week for
midweek, I think,
fun.
would work.
I would love that. I
Yeah,
would love a bigger challenge to do that. And
yeah.
it's hopefully in the code somewhere. It's just a switch they could flip when they want to on an event. We'll see. I
You
don't know.
think?
Maybe it's just across the board they can't do it. All right, let's get to some questions because I don't want to keep you up too late. It
Okay.
is very late where he is. I don't want to be respectful of Steve's time. First and foremost, bro, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. Really appreciate it. I think this is really
Pleasure, man.
healthy
It's been good to talk. It's been good to talk.
for everybody to hear and see just the differing opinions and just have an intelligent conversation about it.
Mm.
What do you think of Webcore expanding the size of frequency of sets? Is it just a money grab? What can we do to help new players get into the game? So those are two separate questions. Let's start with the first one. What do you think of Webcore is expanding the size and frequency of sets? Let's start there. I'll let you answer that.
Well, it will not surprise you to learn that I have a pessimistic outlook on this because they don't have a good hit rate of designing cards, and now they're going to design more cards.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah. Then
yeah.
I do think Webcore are a little better than Octagon at designing cards. Yeah.
A lot.
I tend to think,
hold on. A lot better, but go on.
right. I'm going to say a little, right? Because I tend to think that Octagon only ever made a good card by accident.
Right.
You know, when
That's
they
my
made something
point.
like Blade, when they made something like Blade Coil Serpent, they had no idea how that was going to play.
No clue.
You know, absolutely no idea. And Webcore do have, I think they've got some idea. When they made Rakdos and charged $80 for it, I think they knew what they were doing.
They knew what they were doing.
Oh,
they
but I
also
don't
did
think
the
they're
same thing
great at
with
designing cards.
Bright Glass Gear Hulk, right? It's another one that's that way.
Oh yeah,
they
pretty
knew what
much,
they were
yeah.
doing with it, right?
Because just quickly about Gearhawk is that it's not just a part of this combo deck that I've been talking about. It's also a second copy of Galter for the Grist deck. That's going to be dangerous when it starts to hit.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
You know, like having a second. You know, I've talked today about having a second copy of Golden Wish with Mystical Teachings.
Yeah.
2 Galters in your 10-card deck. That's pretty scary, isn't it? You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So we'll see what happens when
without
that
having
hits.
to do shenanigans. There are still ways you can get Galta to trigger every time on entry, but that requires a little finagling.
Yeah, reclaim.
Right, but with Bright Glass, that change you don't have any shenanigans. You can just run 3 creature builds and then you just still do what you need to do. So the other thing I want to add to what Steve just said there, and I know you guys are asking Steve, but remember that Webcore does not set the pace of what sets come out. They have to model what Wizards of the Coast does. Now, the only caveat to that is like the PM2 cards and those evergreen sets. That's another thing I was going to mention earlier. The size of standard with a 3-year rotation. Paper Magic doesn't have permanent standard sets. Even those rotate out over time. They'll replace it with another one, but they always rotate out. We have permanent standard sets between PMA, PM2, Origins. So we have and Jumpstart. We have like four sets right now that are permanent standard always. You can't have a longer tiered rotation and then have those cards standard. I think 2 years is probably their max. I'd be curious to see what a 1-year rotation looks like, but that might be too aggressive.
I agree. Well, I think it wouldn't hurt to do more. I mean, we always talk about making, you know, block events, you know. I think it was nice that they gave us Implicit Maze.
Right.
It was a shame it was a sucky ass PvE event, you know.
It's a great
with
idea.
Like really terrible restrictions on the objectives.
Right.
But I'd like to see some more, you know, it doesn't have to just be standard and legacy. Yeah, a 1 year and a single event with just the last 1 year worth of
Yeah,
cards might be
yeah.
interesting,
They don't even need to
But
change
I think,
standard, right? They can just say, hey,
but I
this is
think,
standard, but we're going to do these sets for this event. That's within their
yeah,
power.
no, I agree. But I do still kind of, go with you on this idea of just knocking it down from 3 years to 2 years overall anyway,
Yeah, I
I just
think it's
think
a
it
healthier.
might be safer, to do,
I
yeah.
think it's a healthier meta that it provides for it. So finishing the rest of the question from Undead American, is it just a money grab? How do you feel about that? I don't think there's enough money grab. What do you think?
Yes. Yes, it's a money grab, absolutely, I
Okay.
mean,
Is that a bad
such a
thing?
tiny
Is that a bad thing?
such a tiny well, I mean, maybe not, because they do have to keep going, don't they? I mean, I do find myself spending a little bit more money on the game than I
Good.
have in the past, Over the last year, I probably spent more money in a single year than I ever have in the past. I bought, Gris,
Mm-hmm.
I bought Dak, and
Yay.
I bought a Minotaur. I bought all
Uh-huh.
the they're all really powerful
They're excellent
planeswalkers, but,
walkers. Yeah.
I feel like spending some money on the game because I want to keep it going.
Yeah.
I do think you can play for free, but I want to keep it going. So maybe it's not such a terrible thing if it's a money grab. We will see. I don't like the fact they charged $80 for Rakdos and Gearhulk. That's the kind of money grab I don't like at all.
I think if it's such an unfair advantage, like if it's a win con all on its own, which Rakdos has proven to be, it took time, but
Mm,
Rakdos is up there. I personally don't have a problem running against Rakdos because I do a lot of Steal Your Girl. So if you're running it, I'm running it. What are we playing today?
yeah,
Kind of thing, right? So I'm fine with it.
yeah,
But I understand that it's daunting if you're behind or if you're playing a serious build to face it in coalition events where you can't run a specific build type to deal with it, and it becomes problematic. I get it. But at the same time, I'm a big proponent of, you know, listen, just because you don't want to buy a thing or something's behind a paywall, somebody else says here that the game is pay to win. I very much disagree with that. I think that those people that are buying these things are affording to fund the game that we love playing because without those folks, without me and the rest of us doing that, we're not playing a game. The game's dead. This is a business at the
yeah,
end of the day. They need to make money. What I
yeah,
won't tolerate, and what I've said to them directly, especially in like spoiler stuff where they give to us and they're like, hey, this is an exclusive card. I won't make a video about it because I think it's garbage. And I don't want to encourage anybody to go get that exclusive card because it's bad. I tell them, I'll
yeah,
make this video if you want, but people aren't going to like it. And you probably won't too. It's probably best I don't make the video, but I appreciate you giving me the card because it's bad. Um, but if they put out poor quality or if they put out something that is not good from a poor design standpoint and asking for money, then I have an issue. I would rather they put out good things that are not going to break the game, but are also really worth having. A good example of that is Planeswalkers, right? Planeswalkers, getting them early, paying cash for them, getting those. I think that's a good place for folks to invest in. It's viable. I would also like to see alternate art planeswalkers that you can pick up for like $10 a piece for folks to be able to flex
yeah. I
and just
do think
have
cosmetic things would be
cosmetic
a
things would
really
be
good way
great.
to make money.
Exactly.
I
And
really they should have done foils by now, shouldn't they?
yeah,
I mean, that seems
yeah.
like a slam dunk,
Well,
really.
they're
People
getting
would
into
pay money for it.
animations, right? They have the animated backgrounds. I think it all is progressing towards we're making micro steps to what the framework can handle. You know what I mean? And
Okay.
and because of that, it's limited. And another conversation. Sorry, I don't want to keep us here all
Okay.
night. A final question he asks is, what can we do to help new players get into the game? What do you do to get new players in the game, Steve? Or what do you recommend other people do?
What do I do to help get new players into the game? Mostly just answer their question. Like I've been playing so long, and I have such a strong opinion about the high end of the game.
Mm-hmm.
Like if I started ranting to new players about the fact that Ocelot Pride should be nerfed, that's going to scare them right away. So
Yeah.
uh, new players, well, I say new players turn up in my Discord. They don't just turn up.
Yeah.
Shout out to Sarah, who does a
Yeah.
lot of fucking recruiting to get new
Yeah.
players in. But generally, I just try, talk to new players a lot, but on their level. They will ask me questions. I'll give them some basic advice. I always used to say, craft all of the origins mythics with your orbs. I used to think that was some good advice, but I don't know. That's kind of changed. Yeah, no, that's changed now.
I
Since
don't
ever
agree with that.
since
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
I
no,
think
but ever since they
yeah.
do the individual crafting, you could do things like going after wizard class now,
Yeah.
can't you? You can do
Yeah.
things like going after Harold.
Yeah.
So that's outdated, that advice now. Don't
Yeah.
listen to that, new players, when I say that,
Yeah.
you know? I
Yeah.
think haven't you done some videos about
I have. I have a whole
helping new
series that I've
players
got
out,
coming out
Goz?
too that are about how a new person could, because I do have a free to play account, and in addition to my main account, and my free to play account has never spent any money on anything. But in addition to that, it has a competitive. It's top 10 rank. Like I can play in top 10 coalitions with the cards I've gotten from there, and I just built it up in the last 6 months really of play. So I'm gonna do one last series with there to do that, and I always advocate, because standard is so strong, and I think it's necessary. You shouldn't look at legacy. You shouldn't concentrate on origins. You will get those packs for
Agreed?
free over time.
Yeah.
Go concentrate on the heaviest set stuff, which is go get.
There is one elite pack from OTJ, and it's
Mhm.
got about 7 like proper winners in. It's the
Yes.
elite pack with desert in it. I can't
Yes.
remember. It's got Vraska in it. I think it's got requisition raid in it. It's got
Mhm.
about 7 really good cards. And if you're a new player, you want to know what you should spend your jewels on, go find that OTJ
Yeah.
pack, and that's what you should
Whenever
be
that
working
comes
towards.
up, go
It
put into it
takes you a
heavy.
while to get 400 jewels as a
Yeah.
new player, but when you've
Does
got
it
it, that's
does
the
it though
elite
with
pack.
BFTA? See, that advice is dated too. If you have BFTA
Well,
and you have
no,
a deck
but
that can
new players
compete,
can't grind BFTA, can they? New players don't
go
necessarily
play
have
my
the decks to
Satoru
grind.
Judith build. Go play my Satoru. It's brand
Interesting.
free to play card. You can
Interesting.
go
Okay.
win like that, bro. That's
Nice.
that's part of
Okay.
the whole focus what I look at for these guys. Anyways, great answers, love it. What do you think of the? Do you play Commander at all? Have you played Commander in paper?
Very little. I play on a very casual basis, actually. My commander deck was like mono green, very Timmy. My
Yeah.
commander deck
Well,
was.
that's what it's for. It's
Whereas,
fun.
when I was playing tournament Magic,
Hmm.
Spike all the way, I was the
Yeah.
kind of player who was playing, Jace the Mind Sculptor,
Right.
So, but
I think
Commander,
if we compared our paper decks, we probably have a lot of cards that were similar.
you might be right there. But Commander is a very casual format.
Yeah.
I've always been drawn to the one-on-one format, and the politics that comes out in a Commander game with multiplayers has never really been my bag, really. By which I mean I'm crap at it and I lose games.
Yeah. What do you think of some variation of that in PQ? Disregard the capacity to, the ability to, the potential for it to happen. Would you like to
What,
see something
four-player
like that?
games in
Yeah.
PQ?
Yeah. I mean, if we could
Oh
do a
my, I've
four-player
no
game.
idea. I mean, that's blown my mind. Even the idea of it. That's crazy, isn't it?
Any format you can add to the game, I'm for. I don't see how anything extra could be bad. So I would love to see it. You know what I mean?
I like interaction between players, and
Mm-hmm.
like I don't like standards going in this direction where you tend to just ignore what Greg's doing and just
Yeah.
steamroll over the top of him.
Yeah.
I'm a control player. I like the interaction between players, and so a game with an PQ game with 4 players, an interaction going on between them, that appeals to me in theory. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it would be great. Get over yourself, Spikes. Joke, obviously. Ocelot pride is a problem. I agree. I think it's a problem.
Look, there's always going to be some players who, if you print a card that says you win, it costs 0 mana, yeah, and it says you win instantly. Oh, and by the way, you win the next 6 games as well. There's always going to be some.
I'd have
There's
3
always
in my
going to be
deck.
some players who. There's always going to be some players who really love cards like that, and I'm never going to be able to persuade them otherwise.
Right.
I want to hammer home my point that we want to keep the player base of Magic Puzzle Quest as broad as possible, and that means keeping the Johnnies who want to play their combo decks, but it means keeping the Spikes who want to play competitively.
That was Main Loop, by the way, that said that. FYI.
Oh, thanks, man. Appreciate it.
This one's from Zipvert. This is a comment. The Coalition Challenge matches always desync before you can finish the game if you play anything too complicated that does too much in a turn. It's just more of a comment. We're getting shorted on Foundations, though. MTG gets it for 5 years, and we're rotating after 3. I think that's healthy and fair.
Do you not think Can I just say, do you not think Foundations sucks? Do you not think it was a terrible?
I think there's a lot of great cards in
We
Foundation.
had Mystical Teachings,
yeah,
and
well,
that was like it for me. Like,
really?
I do think I think Confiscate is a bit overpowered, but I didn't chase it, and I'm not bothered to get it.
Let me pull up my chase list. So I have a chase list inside of my.
What do you think is chase worthy in Foundations?
Let me pull it up real quick.
I thought the theme was terrible generally. It kind of had no theme. I love the theme of Duskmorn. I'm on record saying I absolutely love the theme, but
Duskmorn,
not into the theme of
this is one
Foundations
of the
at
things.
all.
I wish we had 3 sets again, a block in a set. I would have loved
Yeah.
to spend 3 sets in Duskmorn. There was
Yeah, it would have
so
been
much
nice,
fun
wouldn't
stuff we
it?
could have done. That would have been great.
Yeah.
From a I like lore. I hope you know I like lore. That's why I write the music and stuff. I would love the narrative of Mirrodin and Phyrexia, New Phyrexia, and I like that was that whole year basically across different worlds. And I love the narrative of Duskmorn. I would love to spend more time there. But Foundations, Akrama's Memorial, I think is great because it gives haste on. Oh my god, it gives haste. Listen to me, guys. It gives haste on combat phase. So that's what I like about it. So that I can have creatures come in, or I can pull. There's certain interactions I have that take creatures at start of combat and it gives them haste as well. So I love that. Time Stop.
Okay.
Time Stop is good.
What does Time Stop do? I mean, it shuffles the board, right? What
Well,
does
it
that
disables
mean
your
that it
opponents.
shuffles the
It
board?
doesn't break your
It
loops.
does not.
It disables
right.
your opponent's cards.
I just want to home in on this shuffling the board thing though, because they have written words on the card there that don't do anything, haven't they? They've written a lot of words on that card that don't do anything.
I like that it does that.
Temporarily disables everything that Greg does. That's a nice effect. It's not powerful enough for me that it only does it for 1 turn. But I really hate the fact that it's just got these irrelevant words all over it.
So I don't hate that it shuffles the board. What I hate is that when the board shuffles, there's no chance for matches. That has always bothered me. So that's
what I mean. Like if you could get matches off it, I would probably completely reevaluate that card. But you can't. So I don't care.
A second lesser thing for it for me is how many, and again, tin hat. Let me put my tin hat on. How many often when you put a support out there does it end up when you're trying with mana field in the corners?
It's random, Goz. Randomness is clumpy, Goz.
That random clumpiness.
Randomness doesn't always look like randomness.
I must be in the 8-year clump of it always in the corners because maybe the rest of my life it'll never happen again. But in this 8-year block,
that could be what it is. Like you are the outlier. Everyone else in the world is experiencing randomness.
100%.
And you are the outlier who isn't.
Confiscate. Mystical teaching.
Like I say, I think Confiscate is too powerful, but I'm not chasing it.
I don't think it's as powerful. I think if you had it, you would realize it's not as powerful because it's really dependent on what Greg does. I think it can be very powerful in certain moments, but those are so far and few between.
I really feel sorry for that guy. It's going to happen to somebody soon. They're going to come up against that in Colors of Magic.
Right.
And I really feel sorry for them. Because they can't play it. They've got to be playing with rares. But Greg, he doesn't give a shit in Colors of Magic, does he?
Right.
Greg's always playing with bloody mythics.
Yeah, well, yeah, because people just go in there to collect their they've got all the cards, so they're just collecting the rest of them. I'm going to go through the rest of these super quick. Midnight Snack, I think Quilled Great Worm is good. Raise the Past, I think it's good. Genesis Wave, you're playing with that. Coma World Eater.
All right, that's quite big, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, that leaves a lot of power on the table, I admit.
I like Blasphemous Edict because it gives black mass removal for creatures. Banner of Kinship is good.
Yeah, but 13 cards in the graveyard is a lot, isn't it? It's a lot.
Have you played? There's a planeswalker called Grist. Have you heard of her? Banner of Kinship, Goblin Negotiation.
You've got to use that first ability a few times before it works.
I don't think it's as many.
Requisition Raid. All you need to do is a cascade on the board.
I'm not arguing. I'm not saying it's better than Requisition Raid. I'm saying
I know. I'm very boring about Requisition Raid.
Requisition Raid is one of my top 2. Good. Right? It's that good. No, I don't disagree with you at all. Those are the top 3. Urgent Necropsy is third, distant third. Chaos Warp is number 1 for me, and then Requisition Raids. The only challenge I have with Requisition Raid, you got to make 2 matches, and if you don't have 2 matches that you can make,
I mean it can be a turn slow sometimes.
Yeah, you're stuck, but at least you got it. And especially if they make you discard the card, ooh, come on, man. And I like Goblin Negotiation. I think there's potential for that, although I haven't broken it yet. I think it's really good. I think it has a potential for loop and token stuff.
Well, that puts X Goblins in play.
Yeah.
All right, that's not on my radar, that one.
Oh, I like that.
I like goblins.
Yeah?
I am a goblin, after all.
Okay, rest of the questions here, we're going to wrap up for the night. Give us another 5 more minutes here. Do you remember when Greg? Yes, I do. Scaling Greg from Silver, Gold, Platinum. When they first started the Collectors and the other bundle, at least in Wilds of Eldraine, I think they did try selling exclusive cards outside of the specific bundle. I don't remember them doing that. They're going to do more. Okay, they're just talking. I'm trying to see what questions they have.
Okie dokie.
Quotient of it changes. Judith has gotten from BFTA, so still a little bit of a wall there for newer players. Not necessarily. I think you can get it. We'll show you ways to get it done. Unless they go for the alt art, shuffling board, and cosmic. I think that's it. I think it's all the questions. Oh dear, use it with any other
Okay.
questions you guys have for my man Steve here. A lot of it are just comments and just them agreeing with and having conversations about. So I would highly encourage coming on here and asking the question. It was only done with once with Kellen. All right, I do. Steve, appreciate you, man. Longtime leader in the space. I had immense respect for you, what you've done in the space. And although we don't always agree eye to eye on the particulars, I do think that in general, we are on the same side for the advocacy for the game, increasing it.
I think we both want the game to go forward, don't we?
We definitely do.
What's
Yeah.
healthy for it?
Healthy forward. What does that look like? I think that line moves at certain points. And again, for me, for clarity, it is, hey man, if Greg, again, terrible argument, I'm not disagreeing with you on it, but if Greg can't pilot it against other people and it's not getting in their way, let me play the way I want to play. And once it does cross that line, though, and it becomes, and we're close to a meta right now in standard that is over the top broken. One more set like this with another Mystical Teachings or a full power card that comes out beyond Bright Glass, and I think we're at that stage. And again, if it's creature based, I think that's the other thing too, is if it's creature focused doing the thing, that's where Greg can pilot. Yeah, he's gonna cast it, and that's where it's gonna have bigger issues. So we may be there, but I think it's not permeated enough for us to see. So again, take these builds that I've spotlighted here. This is Steve's build. No, this is my build, and then this is Steve's build here. Go wreck havoc. Go wreck the boards. Do it in quick battles.
Do it in coalition events to annoy people.
That's what Steve. Views expressed by Steve are not necessarily those of Goz Master, any of its affiliates or associates. Please don't hold anything that
Do
Steve
you know what
says
I like to
against any court of
do
law.
all the time? I like to play Desert, right? Not because I like it, because I like to think that other people are going to come up against it. I'm a horrible griefer sometimes.
This is where Steve and I look across the Grand Canyon at each other and say, "You're a jerk." Yes, I am.
Yeah, kinda.
And then I do certain things for cards like, "Oh, I play this." You're a jerk. Yes, I am. This is what I love to play. And as long as it's not bothering anybody else, we're totally fine. But hey man, I appreciate you being here as always, guys. I appreciate you guys taking the time to be here. I hope you guys enjoyed this. Hey, let Steve know that you want to see his face more often on his videos, number one. And number two, that you want to see him put out more content than just set reviews, because we love his insights. We'd like to see his stuff. He has a channel. I will set the link in here. I didn't actually put it before, but I will put it in here so that you guys can actually go sub to his channel. Go give him lots of love.
I haven't actually finished it. If I can just leap in, I haven't actually finished the set review of the latest set. I've got to part 4 and I haven't done that yet. So there will be one of those coming out live, maybe in the next couple of days, actually. So
if you guys have not had
and then if you miss that one, you're going to have to wait 3 months for the one after that.
For the next one. If you guys have never had the opportunity to see Steve do his bit on it's one of my favorite things to do. I've told you this before. I always wanted to do here's me talking about a card and I think it's this and it's that. But let's ask Steve, and then have a segment on my video that says, "What does Steve think?" And then it's just, "Oh, it's bloody hell and go beep beep," and just bleep out all the cuss. That was what Steve thought. So there you go, ladies and gentlemen. Just a quick little
sucks!
I would love that. If I had more time, I would definitely do that. Appreciate you, man. It's late. Get some sleep. Rest well. And
I will.